Ford Galaxy second generation 2-liter TDCi, was produced from 2006 to 2015, same platform as Ford S-Max, 2-liter diesel engine. So we're gonna replace diesel fuel filter on this car. Open the bonnet and see what's going on in here. So we just simply pull this plastic up and take it off. Sometimes it can be held on little bolts. This particular car has just 2 catches here, and then these 2 bits go into these holes. Just pull it off. Our fuel filter is located in here. This is the line that comes from the tank. It gets filtered, and then it comes out here and goes to the high pressure pump. And this line is a return, so whenever the engine doesn't need the fuel, it just brings it back. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna undo take this cover off, open the fuel filter. I'm gonna tell you about different variations because some of them close differently, but we'll talk about it later. And this is what the fuel filter look like inside there, and we're gonna replace the O-ring, rubber O-ring as well. So we take T30 Torx bit and we undo these few bolts here and the other one. And then we have 10mm nut just here, so we're gonna undo this one as well. Final touch. And then we'll take this cover off, and that reveals our fuel filter. Something I need to say about fuel filter cap. On older models, they have a bit that looks like a nut at the top, 27mm. So what you do to open that, you'll have to disconnect these 2 hoses. You simply press on them, twist and disconnect. They'll be leaking some fuel. We're gonna have some leaking fuel anyway. Disconnect this sensor, and then you apply 27mm socket, and then you undo it. In our case, we have 4 bolts holding it. So what we're gonna do, we're not gonna disconnect these fuel lines. We're gonna disconnect this sensor. Now we're going to disconnect the sensor, this connection. We can either press with a screwdriver on this yellow bit and pull it off, or alternatively, if it's too stiff, you can help it by lifting this yellow bit on the other side, taking off the hook, and then you take it off. A little bit messy, so what we're going to do is use some tissues around, because if you have a look from this side, come on this side, have a look underneath. As you can see, there is alternator, so we don't want to spill diesel fuel on the alternator. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna cover everything around with the tissues, so we don't damage any electrics. This comes off. The thing we want to do, we want to disconnect the clip for the return pipe. This clip is broken. It was broken before us, which is easier for us. We don't have to disconnect it. It looks similar to something like this. You simply pull it out. So you pull it out of here and unclip it. Now we're going to undo these 4 bolts and replace the filter. Okay, that's T30 Torx screwdriver. I'm gonna make them loose. take them out and don't lose them. And then we simply lift it. It can sit pretty tight. You just move it little by little. You can help it with a screwdriver. Here it goes. Because that ring also sits there. There we go. As you can see, a little bit of diesel spilled in here. Wasn't that scary. You can compare color of the old filter and the new one. How much dirt has it got? Alright, so what we're doing here is simply pull it off here. You can drain it back. But what I do for perfection, there's nothing much wrong with this fuel, it's pretty clean. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna get rid of this fuel and put some fresh one in. Get rid of this filter as well. Other move not so necessary, we can hook it up somewhere so it doesn't stay on the way. Then we're gonna get rid of that fuel. For that we can use few pumps. You can buy something like this for a $5 and $1/2. Pretty cheap and nasty, but does the job. I have a slightly smarter tool you can buy on the internet. You will need it to prime the filter. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna pump out all this fuel, the old one. Like that. I like this clever design of fuel filter housing, because any spillage is caught. So you see, as you can see, we have no spillage at all on the underneath. So it's really good. I would say it's better than on my VW Charan. Even though I'm a big fan of VWs, we can just give it a good clean. Make sure you keep inside it clean, very clean, because we don't want any dirt in our fuel and going into high pressure pump, because it has to be perfect. Next thing we are going to do is replace this O-ring. Has a slightly different feel to the new one. So we take the new one. I'm gonna lubricate it with the diesel, so it comes in nice and smooth. And then you put it on, make sure it sits straight everywhere along the groove. Now we can put a new filter. Simply pop it on like that. And we don't want to leave there empty. If you leave it empty and if you try to start it, you won't be able to start it, because it has to be full. It can't have too much of air gap. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna put some diesel in there. The fresh diesel here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna fill it up with the diesel, not all the way up, almost up. Till about here. And then carefully immerse this filter into the diesel and let it fill up. So you carefully, little by little, put it in. So it goes through the filter. And now we go to the point when a rubber bit comes into the metal. So we're going to push it in. Like that. Then we put these bolts back in and tighten them. When you're tightening these two bolts, don't tighten one all the way through. Go in like a star pattern, in this case, because it's only 4 bolts, like a cross pattern. So evenly, so the cap goes in evenly, not like you jump one side and then you push another one in. So tightening torques, I try to find the tightening torques for these little bolts. The figure I found was 8 Newton meters. This torque wrench is set for 8 Newton meters. So we're gonna do it up to 8. They don't have to be too hard. In my VW Chiron, bolts are slightly smaller and they are 5 Newton meters. So is that in that range, between I think 5 and 10 Newton meters. I'm putting it at 8. Please correct me if I'm wrong. There we go. We can reconnect this sensor. And what situation do we have now? We have some air bubbles in here, which is not so great. If you don't have a pump like this, but it's easy to buy, have a look on eBay. I'll put my affiliate link. Have a look in the video description. I'll put a link for this little pump. If you don't have one, you'll be able to start. It won't start as smooth till you can keep starting the engine and keep checking so there's no more bubbles flowing through here. But ideally, and it's not so difficult, what we're gonna do, we're gonna disconnect this return pipe and we're gonna pump the air and fuel out through the filter into the air pressure pump and then come back and then make sure that there is no air left inside. So this is what we're gonna do now. So what we're gonna do, to disconnect this pipe here, you press on this red button here and there is another one exactly the same at the bottom. You squeeze them and then we'll have some fuel leakage here, so I'm going to put the tissue and then you pull it out. And it was not too bad, it was not too bad at all. Connect our hose. It's 8mm hose. On the inside it's 8mm. We put it on and then we start pumping. So far is only air coming. Oh, as you can see, have a look in here. There is a bubble and there's already fuel coming, so that fuel is lifting, so all the air is coming out. Currently we're pumping air out, but eventually it will go just as a pure fuel. To help it to pump, so make sure no air coming back, you can, when you're pressing it, then you close it with your finger and then you can see it has more power to pull. Or alternatively, immerse the other end of the hose into diesel, and then we'll have diesel coming through, so it will help pump out all the bubbles. I think we have all the bubbles, they have gone through anyway, and that will, because if you'll be pumping air, some air can be coming in and coming out, but with the fuel, as you can see, little by little we're sucking everything out. It feels that it needs time to get through. We filled up this tube with the diesel, so we can make sure that there is no air in the fuel system. Achieve the result. It's all clear fuel now. We pumped out quite a lot of air out of there. You can see through these little windows here that it's all full of diesel. There's no bubbles. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna disconnect this hose. One more thing I have to say, that it's not a big problem if there is a air in the return, because return doesn't go back to the engine, it goes back to tank and filter. So now we can start the engine and make sure there is no bubbles in here. Just double check. So we can take this paperwork out. We didn't need it so much, so it's all nice and dry. Make sure that it's all nice and clean. So this broken clip that's broken in this car, just clip it back on, and let's try to start the engine and see what it behaves like. Check here for bubbles. It's all nice and clean. Perfect. Now let's put the protection back on and off you go. All we got to do now is just put this protection back on. Make sure that you push this one all the way in. It doesn't need to have a gap here, so just push it all the way in, green to the black. Easy peasy.